Pensado's Place is brought to you by
Our guest was part of the musical story probably the last decade. We've got a very special ITL, lots of giveaways. Let's crank this puppy up, Will. It's Pensado's Place.
Everybody, welcome to another issue of Pensado's Place. Issue?
I didn't know we put out a print version.
Acid flashback, if there ever was one. Gee whiz. I did a really good yay that time. Did you notice that? I hope we taped that one. We might have to sample that one.
It was.
Guys, we got a fun-packed, just great show for you today. We're, we pride ourselves in helping you guys get access to some equipment, so we've got a lot of neat things for you today. My guest is a person I've been wanting to talk to forever. Glad I get to do that in front of you guys. Herbert?
Lots of stuff. Let's get to it. Let's do our homework. You know where to contact us, Facebook, Twitter, and at obviously our website, pensadosplace.tv. We are happy to be coming to you live from the Art Institute of Los Angeles, right? It's actually the Art Institute of California.
Your tones are very dulcet today. Mellifluous.
Mellifluous. We'll get you together.
10 shows I haven't said it right.
Before Dave abruptly interrupted me, again, we're happy to be coming to you live from the Art Institute of California in Los Angeles. Lots of stuff for you. Our sponsors are being particularly groovy
I'm so happy.
to you guys, and that's because of your devotion. So let's talk about a few things. We've got the Avid, our wonderful guys at Avid. A couple things are going on. One is you're going to have a chance to do a live chat with Dave. That's June 28th from 11 a.m. to 12:30. Remember, Dave, didn't they come up to the house and they did a cool webinar with you?
It was very cool. I'm just going to write down 11 a.m. here.
So you know what?
Yeah.
So you know what time to be there. If you go to pensadosplace.tv, our blog spot will have all the details for that live chat. Thanks to our Avid friends. We also have a cool thing that they're giving away. It's the FastTrack C400. A great little interface. You want to show them, Dave, and tell them a little bit about it?
I just like the name, FastTrack C400. It's kind of like
the name actually defines why it's cool. You want to tell them why it's cool, why it makes it so easy for people?
Yeah, because I came up with that name, FastTrack 400.
And there you have it. So that's
you know what, guys? This thing is really neat because a lot of times you don't want to lug a big desktop around. You want to just lug a laptop. And this little unit is designed to get you in and out of Pro Tools really quickly. And I'm a big fan of this. Check this out, and we're going to give it away, right, Herb?
Absolutely. Here are the details that you need to know. The contest lasts for 2 weeks. The winner will be announced on pensadosplace.tv on our homepage around July 5th. So make sure you enter. Go to pensadosplace.tv/Avid, and we'll announce that winner. Very cool things. Avid's going to be giving some very cool things to you guys. Stay tuned. We got more coming. On to our next guys. Yes.
Of all these knobs, which knob do you think I like the best?
Well, because of your fixation with knobs, which we've established now over 75 episodes, I'm going to stay away from that question.
Big knob, big knobs.
Wow.
Big knobs are always better than little knobs. Right, Andrew? I'd much rather have a Pultec knob than like a little tiny knob.
I'm going to let you guys work all that out and how you interpret Dave's information with that. Anyways, on to our next buddies, Vintage King. Lots of stuff coming from them, too, in-depth gear demos, lots of cool stuff. Plus, they're opening a place called VKLA. We've gone down, Will's gone down. It is going to be off the chain. Also, as usual, in our chat room is Drew Towson. Drew. Do you have a Stump the Vintage King question?
Be sure and ask Drew, how can you tell when your tubes and your vintage gear are worn out before your client shows up? What are the signs you want to use to see when you should replace your tubes?
Okay, so let's stump Drew. And we have one more thing.
That's a question for me, not Drew.
Exactly. We have some cool companies that we have relationships with. One of them is called Indaba, and we're doing a mix contest. We've teamed up with them to do a mix contest from the Indaba community, which you certainly can enter. You can download and mix the stems. The track is called Get Up. It's a band called For a Season. You'll submit your mixes within that submission window, and then a hairy guy who's kind of well known to be a pretty good engineer will pick the winner. Who would that be?
Hairy guy?
Look in your monitor. There you go.
Harry.
There you go.
I'm Pursuit.
Couple really cool prizes with that are there's going to be an SSL Duende bundle that the winner's going to get. So that's worth about $1,400, and we're going to have the winner on the show. So get all the details. You can go to indabamusic.com/Pensado's Place for all that information. Make sure you submit. Dave will pick the winner, and you'll get prizes and get on the show. We got another one.
I'm just upset I can't win this stuff. I do not have the Duende stuff.
Ooh, I'll see if I'll call somebody. I'll call somebody, hook you up.
But I have used it. It's really good.
Is it good stuff?
It really is good
cool.
stuff.
Last but not least.
We never give away anything that's not good because it would just kill me if our audience got something and said, piece of crap.
Absolutely.
I mean, we really do try and hammer these guys to give you guys stuff that's not only usable, but stuff you want and need. So we take that pretty serious.
Here's something that you want and need, which is for our other buddies, Telefunken. Great company. The M80 dynamic mic giveaway that we're doing.
I have one here.
Let's show
My own personal one.
Very good. I want one.
Check.
Anyways, a great mic. We've been talking about it for a minute. You want to enter that contest again at pensadosplace.tv/Telefunken. A great mic.
This mic, our friends at Telefunken might get upset with me, but to me, I like this mic because it's kind of in between a 57 and a 421. It's got characteristics I like from both mics. It really handles a lot of information, and it's got a sweet top end.
So here's the cool part.
All-around great mic. It could be your island mic,
Let's tie that into the ITL that you're going to introduce right now, because we did a very cool thing. You want to introduce that?
Man, you and I were just talking. The ITL, Will did such an incredible job of editing tons and tons of footage. It's mostly self-explanatory, but it's us trying to show you, and not just some information about some microphones you might want to own, but we're also showing you how to listen to microphones and make your own judgments and decisions. So if we can run that, Will. Pretty proud of this one. We're at the Atrium Studio here in Los Angeles. Had an opportunity to check out some Telefunken mics. I jumped at that opportunity because those of you that has followed the show, you know what a big fan of Telefunken I am. And every batter's box, somebody mentions a Telefunken mic. I'd like you to meet my friend Chris Baseford over here. Chris has been kind enough to help us out, and actually, more than help out, he orchestrated this opportunity for us to compare and contrast the different microphones that Telefunken has let us borrow. So, Chris, welcome, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you. Great job today. Couldn't have done it without you. Chris, the reason that I asked Chris is Chris has incredible gifts of hearing, and I have so much respect for his work in the past, and I needed some help in figuring out what was what, and then also it gives us just another perspective. Chris and I don't always agree on everything, so this will give you a little broader perspective, but in terms of the weight, you give both opinions 50-50 here. Chris, tell us a little bit about the process. I know you Logan kind of helped us out. What is Logan's last name?
Logan Heftel. He's a singer-songwriter, artist, a buddy of mine that we've done some work together. Great guitar player, great writer, great singer. So
enjoyed listening to him.
Yeah, he's got some great stuff. So he's out there. What we did is we set up a bunch of different mics. All the Telefunken stuff is great, but they've got a couple different lines that are different price points, different kind of heritage. They've got some that recreate the old classics that everybody knows, the 47s, the 251s, and then they've got the RFT series. So what we wanted to do was set them up and be able to hear the differences, not only between the different series, but also between the different models, the different characters. So we set up all the mics in such a way that the grills and the capsules are as close together as possible, so that way you're not hearing too much of a difference between the position of the mics, but where you can still hear the character difference between the two on the same source. So for instance, for each guitar pass, we had 3 mics, depending on what we were testing, and it's all capturing the same take, so you're not hearing differences between performances. You're hearing the same performance, the relatively close same positioning, and then for mic preamps, I had everything going through Vintech 473s, which is like a Neve 1073 style preamp. No EQ, no compression, just into the SSL and then routed into Pro Tools. Everything we recorded at 2448 through the stock 192s. Nothing fancy on that end. The real trick was just, really getting the mic set up in such a way where the positioning between them wasn't very apparent, because some of the grills are large, and when you put them side by side, the capsules can be not necessarily right up close to each other. So
Chris and I trust our hearing enough. We set up a test that allows us to give you an objective opinion about what we're hearing, and then you can form your own opinion too, because these tracks are available for you to check it out. So without further ado, Will, you want us to just jump right into it?
Well, should we do a first take with a little finger picking part of this song? We'll get Logan to do the first part here. Here it comes.
Chris, would you be more comfortable giving an opinion on all three at one time? Or let's take them one by one. What do you think?
One by one.
Okay, on the of the RFT group, I felt like the AR-51 was, from a mix standpoint, everything I needed to get from it in the mix process was there.
Yeah.
I felt like the high frequency information, I might have to add a little more than I would for some of the other mics, and I felt like the mid-range was satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the low end seemed round and nice to me. I felt like everything that I wanted to hear more of or less of, I could get in the mix process. I would use that mic.
Well, to not jump through the rest of them, but I think that was probably my favorite, and for exactly the same reasons that you mentioned. I felt like, I don't know, pre-mixed isn't the right word, but it almost would probably need the least amount of finagling in a lot of stuff. I felt like it was very balanced, but it was bright enough to cut
Balanced,
through.
that's the word.
Yeah, it's balanced.
Let me jump ahead. I felt that for me personally, the only way I can describe the AK-47, which is my favorite of the three, is classy. I just felt like I was listening to a classy mic.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe the sonic quality as accurately as I could describe the AR-51, but I felt like the high end had a expensive sound to it, and the bottom end was had I EQ'd the bottom end in or off, I'd just leave it. I'd say, okay, we're done there. I felt that was kind of classy. What was your opinion about the 47?
I think the 47, the top end that you're talking about on the 47, or the top end on the AR-51 would be awesome for maybe like something like my J45, which isn't quite as bright. I think the AK-47 for this particular guitar, the source that's a little bit brighter, was perfect, because I don't think you didn't really need that extended top that the 51 had. But yeah, the classy, expensive, this definitely has that sound.
The extended top the 47 had.
Well, I thought the 51 had a kind of an extended top. Yeah, a little bit. And I mean, maybe it's not the top, but it had some articulation with the strings that was a little.
It was certainly all there.
It was sparkly in a kind of a way, whereas I felt like the 47 was maybe, again, I'm gonna stay away from smooth, but.
Well, let's give an award for the best name for a microphone in the bunch. That would
Done. No,
that would
no
hands down be
contest.
the Copperhead, the Copperhead CU29.
And the coolest looking.
Coolest looking, yeah. It has a heft.
On the Copperhead, not looking at your notes. In a dense mix, I probably, like if I'm doing a song, let's say this was a big rock song that I needed acoustic guitars to kind of fit in, I might have gone for the Copperhead. I felt like the mids were more pronounced in such a way. Again, going to the carvability, I think that Copperhead. Oh, there you go. I didn't see your notes, Dave. No, I think the mids had a lot more girth there to give me what I needed to really make it fit in a more of a dense mix.
If you were selecting a mic for a solo kind of folk singer-songwriter, like you'd probably choose the 51, I'd probably choose the 47. If I was picking a microphone to mix in with a rock group, I would probably pick the Copperhead.
Yeah.
I liked the aggressiveness of it.
Yeah.
I felt that the way it handled the expressiveness of the playing, I felt like that came through to me a little more. So I think that would be a good mic to use if you were using it within the context of a pretty dense mix. I think you kind of
Absolutely,
said that.
100%. All right, Logan, let's do the overdub for the strumming part. Here comes.
Wow, we got our job cut out for us. That was pretty close. And when I say pretty close, that's a testament to your old buddy, the AR-51 that you liked from the last group. Are you surprised that it held up to the Diamond Series mics that well?
I was a little surprised. I've used the AR-51 before for vocals, and not having other stuff to compare it to right away. It sounded great.
You didn't, in the disclosure form, you never said that. That's
I'm
automatic
biased.
disqualification, isn't it, Will? The AR-51, here again, sounded mixed ready to me. It sounded like the SM-57 version of the condenser world. It just a journeyman, just anywhere you throw it, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
I felt like, for me, the 251 was my overall favorite. Tell me what you think. I thought that it. I felt like I could hear the nuances of Logan's performance, but I started thinking, man, I bet that'd sound good on like some live percussion, or man,
For sure.
Like, I'd like to hear that as maybe a room mic on a drum kit, or
Even overheads. I think that would sound good on the overheads too.
Do you feel that way too?
Absolutely.
It's so weird. 10K on 20 different pieces of equipment and plug-ins will give you 10 different sounds.
Yeah.
And this mic had a very pleasing, usable high end to me.
Yeah.
That was a long
think,
setup for
and I
that
think you could
sentence.
probably EQ some more into it if you needed it, and it would take it nicely
It
with
and
majority
it
of stuff.
wouldn't be harsh.
Yeah.
Chris, I was thinking on the C12, I got the feeling that anything where an emphasized clarity would add to the performance, add to the listening experience. I felt like that was a great choice for that. Like the articulations of his right hand on the guitar, I felt a little more pleased by those.
Yeah.
And then also I felt like anything that required a certain distance from the source, like say maybe live strings or anything like that, I felt that the top end on that particular mic would be just perfect. And, it's a great close mic, but
Yeah.
I also felt like it would be good for like room mics or
Absolutely.
or like like if you tried to do a live string section in MS mode, I'd choose the C12 for my figure 8 pattern, and I'd choose the AR451 for my cardioid pattern.
Yeah. Absolutely. My thought with the C12 was very similar. I think I would probably pick that mic over the others in a scenario like you mentioned, like a string session, where you can get it back a little bit further, get kind of that lifelike sound.
What about an acoustic piano? I thought it would be
absolutely.
not a Yamaha, but more like a Steinway or
something like that.
Bosendorfer that has a little darker hammers.
Absolutely. Speaking of MS, I'm a huge fan of MS miking. I believe they're now making the AR51, which is also my favorite so far out of all of these, in a stereo capsule that you can actually do MS right in the same thing. So you don't have to worry about aligning capsules or whatever. It's already
really
done.
cool.
So
Very cool. I think that covers that group. Once again, your favorite here again was the 51.
I think the AR51 in this application, and again, the application is extremely specific. I mean, if this was a different guitar, maybe the C12 would have sounded better, or if it was a different room, maybe in my eyes, the 251 might have sounded different or better or worse or whatever. But
well, that's good. The AR51 got some love. It's the least expensive of the group, and to hold its own against some of the most classic microphones ever made.
Yeah.
That's saying something.
Absolutely.
In terms of, we've kind of delineated some things that we thought, other than guitars and vocals, that these mics would sound good. What's something that you, like you would hear and you'd go, oh, AR51, I got to put it on. That's the perfect mic for that. Can you give me one more example?
I think the thing about the AR51 is I would use it on so many different things. If I had a pair of those, which I'm probably going to end up getting, I'd go to them for acoustic guitars. I'd go to them for pianos. I would go to them for room mics, overheads. If I had a pair of those in my hand today and I was doing a full session, I do a lot of rock stuff, so if I was doing a full rock session, I'd probably put those on the overheads first thing.
Let me ask you a question, because it sounds to me like what you're saying is the difference between all the mics we're looking at, the Copperhead, the AK-47, the AR-51, we're talking like the difference is maybe less than 7-8% from the best to the worst.
Yeah,
probably smaller than that.
Yeah, at
really.
the most. Yeah, at the most.
So the differences we're hearing might not be enough for you to make a decision flat out based on our description of sound. Price can be a factor sometimes. So if we're talking about very minute, small differences, which congratulations and kudos to, is kudos a real word?
Kudos?
Kudos.
Kudos?
Whoa. That's something to bear in mind, and Telefunken deserves a lot of credit for spending the time and effort and the extra expense in R&D to accomplish a feat like that. I was expecting some blowing away stuff, some mics to get blown away here. Nothing's blown away. They're within a very, very small range, so
Absolutely.
it allows you to determine within your budget and framework and needs. So far, I'm pretty impressed with the selection that they're offering to the public.
If you've got a limited budget, you're really not making any sacrifice with these particular mics.
Good way to put it. Hope you got something out of that. I sure had fun doing it. And man, like I told you, it's a great day. I get to sit here and talk with Andrew Scheps. He's one of my favorite engineers. He's known for having done 7 or 8 songs on Adele, 4 or 5 of which made the record. Metallica, Green Day, U2, Jay-Z, 99 Problems,
He needs to maybe start
Chili
working-
Peppers.
He needs to maybe start working with some bigger names, right? It's going to be great when he becomes professional.
But Andrew is a kindred spirit. We think a lot alike, so that means you might want to change the channel. I don't know. But hang around for this. Andrew, thank you so much for being here
Thanks for
today,
having
man.
me.
My
Welcome,
friend.
man.
Pleasure.
Pleasure.
Real pleasure.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Andrew works out of Punker Pad, which if you get a chance, go to the web right now and check out Punk. Well, you're on the web right now. Check out Punker Pad. It's the coolest place. It's got to be what heaven's like for us. I mean,
It makes me smile every time I walk in there. Yeah.
Man, it all started University of Miami.
Yeah.
My stomping grounds down there. They've got a great audio program.
Yeah.
They're a little under the radar, but
It was when I went. It was one of the 2 4-year programs you could do for recording. And my parents said you're getting a bachelor's degree, so it was there or Berkeley. And Ken Pullman was at Miami, and I'd been reading his articles for years, and just thought, well, there you go.
There you go.
we're blessed to work out of the Art Institute of California, and they've got a 4-year program here too that's pretty good. How much of an influence? Well, actually, that's a stupid question. I'm going to
answer
ask it
anything.
anyway. I'm
Go
known
ahead.
for that. That's part
I'll
of
give
my.
you a stupid answer too. So.
But for all of us, our influences, especially early on, were so important. And you were blessed to have some great ones: Rick Rubin, Don Was, Rob Cavallo. How did you go from University of Miami to the star that you are? and take me that path.
Well-
as Rick Rubin fascinates me. Of course, Don Was does too, and Rob Cavallo. But there's something about Rick. He's just that enigmatic kind of.
Well, my path was a little bit sideways. I mean, while I was in school, I got internships over the summer at studios. I was at Planet recording in New York, which was amazing, when Dougie Fresh was doing all his stuff there. And then I spent a summer in the Bay Area at Music Annex. But then coming out of school, I thought that's what I would do. Go get a job in a studio and work your way up. And there was a job opening at New England Digital who made the Synclavier, which you won't go into now, but expensive and
Yep.
prevalent. But what it meant was that I was the guy who knew how to run a really expensive thing, which meant I could get in on sessions that I had no business being on.
Oh, what a great way
So
to-
that's
Yeah.
sort of where I worked my way up, always wanting to come back to engineering and producing and all that. But I got to be in a lot of rooms because I could use the gear, and the same with Pro Tools. I was a super early Pro Tools editor scene coming from the
Was
the
that a
sync
function
lab.
of your Synclavier days?
Yeah, I think so. I'm just seeing what they were doing and watching Pro Tools come up behind them and realizing it's time to learn that too. But yeah, that's what got me in the room.
Wow. Did you ever think that that would lead to this? Because back then, the artist I worked at his home studio. I got my start there. It wasn't a home studio, but it was his private studio in Atlanta. He was an original owner of a Synclavier. I think he had number 2, and so we were doing digital in the box, in the '80s on that thing. Did you ever think it would transition into what we are? Well, of course you didn't. But let me rephrase the question: how did that prepare you for the coming into the tape machine in the beginning of Pro Tools?
It just
It helped me, I thought, a little bit.
Yeah, I was just, I think, really lucky that we were there at the transition. Because I think if you come up without the tape and without all those limitations in the process and traditional studio practices and all that, that you definitely miss something. But watching how digital was trying to keep up with analog and then how it started to overtake it in certain areas, it was just a great time to be there, and it definitely helped.
You and I were talking before the show. The Synclavier, I mean, it had sample rates in the stratosphere, and it's still probably the greatest sounding digital piece of equipment ever made. So we kind of had the knowledge of knowing that could be done at some point. That unit sometimes was $500,000 in 1980s money's, Herb. So I kind of always knew that analog would catch up, digital would catch up with analog. It'd just be a matter of cost. Did that help you a little bit making that transition?
Yeah, definitely. And then, now I start to second guess whether digital's caught up with analog. Then there are all those discussions too. But it's certainly in terms of functionality and ease of use, and now sonically, I think it's cool.
Yeah, I think we're there. I officially pronounced the death of analog. I think about 8 or 9 months ago.
Yes, I think you did.
I came up with a saying. I'm gonna spring it on you. analog gear is like a plug-in with one preset.
Fair enough. But as a man who just bought 2 tape machines, I'm feeling a little. Hey, no, it's not that.
Thank you for
Can't be
making our
dead.
guests
What'd you
feel
buy?
terrible.
What'd you buy?
2 Studer 800s.
Oh wow,
So,
those are great.
yeah, but as you say, they have exactly one preset.
Can you still get parts for those?
You can. The 800s, you can. Yeah, it's all standard stuff.
Oh, cool, cool. Andrew, on your records, I hear my old buddy parallel compression. You use a lot of parallel compression,
Almost
don't you?
exclusively, yeah.
Exclusively meaning on every track?
Well, no, instead of insert compression.
Oh, okay.
Like as many people on this particular show have said, compression's kind of hard to understand sometimes, and I have a really hard time understanding when I compress something, all the stuff I've lost that I liked about the uncompressed
Yeah.
version, and
Dude,
I don't.
let me shake your hand.
I don't know how to get it back. So it's
Yeah.
just easier to have 2 of them and balance it. And so, yeah, a lot of parallel compression either on individual things or groups of things. And those groups change song to song. Sometimes it'll be vocal, bass, and kick drum. Sometimes it's all the guitars and the vocals, or, just different stuff and different compressors. But yeah, almost all the time,
It
that's the
almost
only
serves as a
compression
safety
there
net
is.
for you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's a way to get the level or the excitement or the noise out of something, but without losing all of the great thing. When you first put up that track and said, "Man, that sounds amazing,"
Precisely.
now I'm gonna try not to screw it up.
Is for me, a lot of times I want to preserve the dynamics because my music career started, as a performer, and I miss those live dynamics, being able to take a crowd of a few thousand people and lower the volume, and then coming out of the bridge and just get everything kind of neat, and then just kind of soft, and then come back out of that bridge with a kick drum hit that just vibrates everybody's body in the room. I love those kind of dynamics as moments and when I compress the original track, I A/B it, and I'm not sure it ever sounds better. But when I parallel the compression, it seems like you said, it's like that old Reese's commercial where you like peanut butter and you like chocolate. Why can't I have them in the same candy bar?
Exactly.
It gives you a little peanut butter and chocolate on that track. Can you on the Adele record? You did several songs on that. Were there any things that our audience could refer to kind of see a usage of parallel compression that will be an example on how to get them in the right direction?
I mean, that record, first of all, is super, super simple mixes. There's one mix, I don't remember which song, but I had 5 EQs in, period. So it
was
just
tracked that
is
well?
incredibly well recorded. Greg Fiddleman recorded that, and it was amazing. It was a live band. And so, first of all, exactly what you're talking about. All of the little mini dynamics within the performances were a huge part of those songs. Amazing players, all playing together, all reacting to each other. So trying not to get rid of that was my job, But in terms of parallel stuff, there's some parallel 1176 with all the buttons in on her vocal, which is what gave me sort of a fader of aggression. I think of it sort of that way. So you get her vocal, which sounds incredible, but then if it just needs to come up over the top when the band picks up, not that she needs that much help, but rather than just turn her up, I could just turn up a little bit of this 1176, and there was also a BA6A, more just for body and warmth. But again, when I tried putting that on her vocal directly, it just took something away. So
That's a good example. Thanks for sharing that with us, Andrew. I appreciate that.
Tell them the interesting time in terms of your relationship with Adele and actually meeting her.
yeah, I get quite a few questions about how she was to work with. I met her backstage after we had come off stage from winning the Grammy.
Wow, that's amazing. So that's
So
the first time.
that's the
Was
first
that
time-
because of scheduling, or
Just the way that project worked, because I didn't track any of it. I just mixed, and then I sent mixes, and then the album came out, and then it exploded, and then she won a Grammy, and I'd never met her.
Wow.
Well,
So-
you won a Grammy too.
Well, yes, I did.
And that was your
I did.
your second Grammy. You already had the Chili Peppers Grammy.
Yeah.
Very cool.
The Chili Peppers, those records are really dynamic. Those records, they're probably one
Those
more.
weren't simple mixes.
No.
No.
They're
No.
a very underrated bunch of musicians, the Chili Peppers.
Incredible players.
Incredible players.
Unbelievable.
Flea alone. But on the guitars, how did you approach the guitars on those records? When I say approach, Andy Wallace is known for doing the PCM 42 thing, and everybody that does rock guitar, some people are minimalistic because this usually track pretty well. What was your approach to those guitars? Because they always sound kind of like. This question's going to go on forever, Andrew. Go ahead.
Well, with both John and Josh, who's in the band now, they take a lot of time getting their tones for what they want to play, and a lot of time playing to the tone, whether they're standing in front of the amp or not.
That's a very important sentence, playing to the tone.
And my entire theory is I just don't want to screw stuff up. And with their guitar tracks, generally, like for me, the big thing is finding out how to spread them across the stereo spectrum if they haven't actually laid them out in a particular way. Because it's just, I want everybody to hear everything. And there's a lot going on, and the bass is super important. It's not just low end on those songs. And Chad hits the cymbals a lot, so it's finding room. But sonically, I really try and stay true to what they do. Because, I mean, even from when I was just a fan with Hillel, those guitar tones are such a huge part of the band. And that's them.
Plus their musical knowledge, which a lot of people don't know. I mean, Flea actually went to school at USC and took trumpet and acted like a student. He didn't act like Flea the rock star. He showed up early and he got,
I mean, after 20-something years of being in one of the greatest bands around, he decided he didn't know enough and had to know more.
Yeah, which is precisely right. The point is that you continue to strive, you continue to learn. It's great for our audience, to know that. Plus, he put the conservatory together that he had out in Silver Lake, which is amazing. So
Cool.
it must be much more interesting for you to mix guys who are that kind of craftsmen.
Oh, yeah, because you can't wait to put up the next song and see what they did.
The bar is constantly raised. Yeah.
If I'm pushing you too hard, stop me. But so in the attempt to make the guitars wider, is there like a technique that you use you can share with us?
Well, it's not even necessarily wider. It's more like, because I work on an old Neve, so it's one of those consoles where you get a button for the left speaker and a button for the right speaker. And if you want to pan it, you actually have to switch in the pan pot, which drops the level. And it always bums me out. And because it is just level, but I always feel like, it doesn't sound as good. So panning-wise, I'm usually hard left and hard right with almost everything in the song. But then it's doing things like taking the room mic of the guitar and putting that somewhere else. Sometimes all my individual guitar amps will be on a fader, and then I have this stereo pair down at the end of the console that's all the room mics. And that way it's like panning the guitar reverb against the guitar, and just gives me...
You're working with a natural phase relationship to the room mics
and
to
just
create...
trying to find some stereo spread where you can hear everything, but not having to carefully place stuff, in the spectrum.
Another thing I like about your mixes that I've tried to copy, I never really... Well, let me backtrack a little bit. If you work in the solo mode, you're probably going to make a lot of mistakes. And one of the mistakes you might make is if you hear some things on a particular track that sound good in solo, but you think, well, I probably don't need that in the mix, so you put a high pass filter on it to get rid of it. You might make a mistake if you put the high pass filter while you're not in solo mode. You're probably going to make a better decision. And you use a lot of high pass filters. Sometimes you've been known to put a high pass filter on every track.
I have said that in public. Yeah, that's what I do. But it's because
explain why, because I like the concept, but sometimes that scares me.
The first thing is that they're on the console, so it's an easy knob for me to reach. It's the lowest knob on the EQ. I don't have to get up or stretch. So
that's important.
But the other thing is, most of them are set at 45 hertz or 70 hertz. They're not up around 100, 200 or anything like that, because then immediately the body of whatever it is.
Do you have a particular slope you like? 6, 8?
Well, on the knee, I don't have a
12?
choice.
Oh.
So it's whatever the 31102s are, and I'm sure someone over at Vintage King probably knows and can sort that out. I'm assuming they're 12,
That's what it
but
sounds.
I don't know. But it's more that, especially when stuff isn't recorded in an optimal space and you get air conditioning rumble, it's just to get that tiny bit of sub out of things that don't need it, so that the things that really do need it, like the kick or the bass or the acoustic guitar and the bridge or something like that, has all the room it wants and nothing can interact with it.
And your EQ of choice is the console, the Neve?
Yeah, because
do you
it's
ever go
sitting
to
in
an
front of me.
outboard filter for that?
Yeah, every once in a while, but I've got 64 of the Neves and I've only got a couple of the other ones. So either every once in a while, if I want something crazy, I'll use a plugin. Like I love the UA Moog filter. I love the filters on some of the EQ3 is one of my favorite EQs.
I like the UA mode because it's got resonance, it's got a lot of
Yeah.
extra things besides
So
just
if
a
I want
filter.
to go crazy for that, for a real filtering effect,
Yeah.
but for like getting things done, I just use the Neve because it's just sitting in front of me and it's fast.
That's cool. A lot of times, as we're in the mix process, we will mute the vocal if we've started with it, which a lot of times we don't, and then at some point we decide to add the vocal in, and now we basically have to start over again. What's your process in terms of how you work with the vocal and the other parts of the mix?
Because I mix on a console, I've sort of ended up with this sort of two-stage approach where the first thing I do is more of probably what I shouldn't do, and I go through individual instruments and kind of see what's up with them. But it's to get them to the point where I can like group all the drums and it's on one fader, and now drums are drums. It's not kick, snare, whatever. Then, once I get to that point where I sort of know what all the instruments do, and I've also learned all the parts that everyone plays because I've gone through and I've found every guitar and I know where all the background vocals are, and now I know the arrangement really well, then I start just pushing faders up in huge blocks. And the vocal comes in really early, usually, and then it can go away for a little while because it's hard to concentrate on the small overdubs and the keyboard parts if all the vocals are in all the time and you really want to find something special. But I've had them in long enough to know exactly where they go, you know, and then I get rid of them for a while.
But while they're in, do you make an effort to EQ things out of their way? Or
well, absolutely.
Or pan things out of their way?
Yeah, cymbals and guitars and trying to find where that vocalist lives. I mean, unfortunately, with some of the projects I'm on, like with mixing Anthony's voice, now I know his voice. And I know John's background sound and Josh's background sound, that they're really versatile in what they do. So I have kind of a picture already of where they're going to fit, but yeah, you've got to find that spot for them.
And I hear spring reverbs on a lot of your stuff.
Yeah.
Do I?
Yeah.
Why do you like spring reverbs? The cheapest reverbs ever made.
I know, and I'm using, I think it's the Soft Tube spring reverb plug-in too, because here's why. I'd been going back and forth, always trying to find reverbs, and they need to be reverbs that are subtle and that don't stick out, because like mixing for Rick, he's not a fan of reverbs that you hear. He doesn't mind feeling them, you know, having a space.
Right.
So springs are good for that, and then I wanted a multi-mono reverb. I wanted 100% stereo separation, so that if I had a guitar on the left and I sent it to the spring on the right, I didn't want any spring reverb. I wanted no chocolate in my peanut butter on the left. And the multi-mono plug-in was the way to do it, and the Soft Tube spring reverb ended up being, for a couple of years, like the only reverb on most of my mixes.
Wow, that's a nice piece of information to have. Right there. Make a note of that.
Either that, or there'd be, you know, a reverb for an instrument. But in terms of overall reverbs, that was it.
And you pan those. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You pan those hard left and right.
Hard left and right in a stereo sound
that's
on my
right.
console.
You're using one of those old things. Was it? Console. Yeah.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
An analog.
Do you play, by the way? Do you play anything?
I started off on trumpet, and I played just enough of a lot of things. At Pro Tools, and I play a lot.
Okay,
But
gotcha.
I don't play by myself ever.
Gotcha. I got you.
So would you call yourself? You're very internet savvy. The internet's just a buzz with LCR, which just drives me absolutely bat crap. But do you consider yourself an LCR mixer?
I guess. Yeah.
Well,
I
that's
don't
awfully
know.
disappointing, Andrew. There's all that stuff in between that I'm
I
using
know,
that you're not
I know. Well,
having access to.
I mean, see, because I say stuff like, oh, you know, I don't use a lot of stuff, but that's because it's still in the patch bay because the things I use a lot. It's okay, I use a lot of gear. And no, I never really pan anything like, well, that's because the buttons on the console don't let me, but I'll pan it in Pro Tools between two outputs. So, yeah, I pan stuff all the time. I'm lying.
Some of you guys are just starting out. LCR stands for left, center, right, and those are the three positions that Rick only has those three positions. It's so sad. I have an infinite number of positions I can put things in, but he wants to put left, center, right, so LCR. I'm just teasing you, of course. because ultimately that's what we all do, left, center, right. That's very rare you'll find
There's
something.
stuff in between.
And there's been studies that show that you can't pick anything out in that space anyway. I'm not sure those are accurate. I think those are flawed studies, but anyway. Another thing I notice about your work is you construct your courses in such a way that there's an imagery there. There's a visualness to help me, Herb. I'm dying here. There's a visual component to the way you construct your courses so that they amplify the energy and the emotion. And when I get to the chorus, I'm ready to drive to the record store and buy the record. Or I'm ready to go rip it off of LimeWire or whatever. How do you accomplish that? I mean, I know you try to do it first, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's always, like if you get to the chorus and it doesn't give you goosebumps at least once while you're working on the song, then you're not there. And it's a constant battle. And sometimes very early in a mix, you get it, like the transition works. And I have to make a point to step away from the console. I take a snapshot of the faders. I save the session. Like, okay, now I'll keep mixing the song. And I'll even sometimes just print that little bit so I can go back to it and realize how much I've screwed it up in the last 4 hours and then go back to what I had. But it's absolutely an emotional response when you get there.
I know it's hard to delineate an emotional response, and I agree with you. I feel it. I mean, I'm reacting to it. But it's not an EQ thing. Is it a level thing, or is it just? I know it's a feel thing for you, but if you had to break it down for a guy starting out, would you say kind of look out for what?
I think it's definitely a level thing. One of the things I love about mixing on the console is the faders and having them physically, and that my Pro Tools rig's off to the side. I'm not looking at the screen. And so I spend a lot of time kind of head down between the speakers just pushing stuff around. And like the automation gets turned on maybe 40 minutes before I'm ready to print the mix for the first time. I won't automate. I'll automate in Pro Tools to fix problems so that the song can play, but I'm trying to find that static balance where the song plays, and I'm rehearsing all these little moves of pushing the drum fill or whatever. And then finally the automation comes on and I try and do all those. And it's a combination of rides, it's a combination of trying to find power in the chorus. So sometimes that's the guitar, sometimes it's the bass, or it's changing the EQ on the bass or something like that. But every song's different, but finding it, you know when you've got it.
Well, and ultimately, the master is having the technical stuff serve the feel things.
Yeah, if you start thinking about the technical, you're
dead
lost.
on.
Yeah.
Right. We try to impart that a lot to the audience, that sometimes you have to let go of the gear and get to the gut.
It's like, and you'll know this, it's like singing background vocals as a guitar player. If you're thinking about your guitar, you can't do it. Your guitar has to be so second nature that you can actually sing.
Great point.
Yeah.
Great point.
I'm the world's worst singer, by the way.
And I can validate that.
You were in my shower?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a piece of information.
Well, you know, your thing with knobs.
So I can only think
you
of
say I
Carl
had a big
Pilkington.
knob?
No, I did not.
So-
I'd be lying.
There, once again, you were in my
The
shower.
show's going off the rails. Bring it back, because batter's box is about 2 minutes away. So.
On the Metallica records, there's a high end on the guitars that I really like. It's not quite that new metal high end, but it definitely distinguishes them, the high end, from my old humbuckers through a Marshall. How did you get that high end?
Well-
Did you EQ it, or were you given it?
Well, again, Greg Fiddleman recorded all those guitars, and what he, and also, I mean, obviously it's the guys playing too. I mean, they are just phenomenal guitar players, and they will use multiple rigs, but what they are amazing at is having distorted guitars that are not noisy at all. There's no noise. So if you want to bring up the presence, you get presence, and you get note, and you get tone, and you don't get that ear-splitting or hissy thing that you then spend the rest of your day trying to get rid of.
Right.
So it's the tones.
Okay, but you're not adding any EQ?
Yeah, I
if
mean,
it is, it's very little.
If I didn't, you know, I wouldn't feel I could charge him. So I EQ crap out of it, but no. But usually I'm EQing probably down a little bit below where you would think. Like their presence is in the tone, and I'm probably down in the 1 to 2.5K range trying to find note.
Right.
so that it's like below the cymbals and below the vocals.
Yeah. Okay, so that explains too, because like the low E and the A, they ride those strings a lot, and those are the strings that are hardest to get clarity if they've been played a while. And it sounds like they're using older strings, but they still have clarity on those strings, and I guess that's you adding that 2K.
Yeah.
Warm up your arms, sir. It's batter's box time.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's what I
ready?
live for. Yeah, of course. I was born
some
ready.
rosin? You need
I do
anything?
not.
All
I
right,
do
cool.
not.
Cool, because we got a
I've been getting
formidable batter.
I've lost about the last 30 batters boxes in a row.
You can lose.
So
Interesting.
so
That means I'm
be
gonna
prepared,
win.
my friend.
Exactly. Oh, I love it. He's competitive. I like it.
All right.
Okay, bagpipe.
Bagpipe, ribbon mic.
There you go. Nice comeback.
All right.
Perfect.
There you go.
I told you I was gonna win this one, Herb.
I'm not sure.
Lead vocals.
The parallel compression I talked about earlier.
Oh, good. No, don't answer that on every one. You'll lose points. Seriously, do you do anything unique for the background vocals?
Background vocals, usually some stereo chorus and sometimes something to push it outside the stereo field, like the Waves S1.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
So a little MS stuff there. Acoustic guitar.
I've tried compressing them for my entire career and don't compress them.
I agree.
Nice.
And this might sound like an odd question, but he did 99 Problems, Jay-Z, rap lead vocals.
Rap lead vocal is one of the few things I can actually put the 1176 as an insert on the vocal
Oh,
and get away
that's
with
neat.
that.
Piano.
I like placing the mics over the ironwork. It actually sounds really cool there a lot of times.
Okay, I'm gonna dock you for mics. I want plugins or gear.
All right. Oh, plugins or gear? All right. Fairchild.
Oh wow.
I'm gonna go big.
Nice.
You know.
Okay, for those of you in the know, Waves makes that.
Wink, wink.
Strings, not live strings, but synth strings.
Synth strings. Lexicon 224.
Oh wow, cool.
All right.
UAD makes a great
A
one.
great plugin for that. Yeah.
Synth bass. I know you do a lot of live bass, but I gotta win here somehow. So.
All right. Synth bass, Aphex 204 for the sub.
Wow. How do you spell Aphex? A-P-H-E-X?
And clearly you're not winning.
So he only wins
he
by
got
I
me.
don't have an answer.
No, you're killing it. I love it.
We've kind of talked about it, but electric guitars.
Electric guitars, I love the Neve EQs for the mid-range, and also the Trident EQs are pretty special. I don't know why, but they do
The
some
A-range.
stuff that's, yeah.
Okay, and I love the UAD A-range. Overhead microphones,
C12s.
C12s. Room, how do you treat the room stuff?
I usually crush the crap out of it. That is stuff that gets compressors straight on it. And I would say LA3As or the Chandler TG.
Okay. Stereo bus.
2264s.
Really?
Yeah. I used to never compress the bus, and then I finally got those to work one day, and now they haven't come off.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I'd like to claim a victory, but he won, Herb.
No question. On a number of fronts.
Yeah, any number of
His
fronts.
feet placement in the box was original. The swing was original, and just knocked him out of the park all the time. That's
A little
that's unique thing.
addendum to batter's box. Do you ever add distortion to your room mics, like with a decapitator or with?
Yeah, I've been loving the Devil Lock.
That is so weird. I've been using that a lot too.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
stuff.
They just came up with an update for that. Have you gotten it?
No, because then
Yeah.
I just got
It's a free
an email.
update,
yeah,
too.
I haven't gotten it yet.
Cool. Fantastic. Listen, our corner office is full of people who want to have questions. Our wonderful guy in the chat room, our producer, Will Thompson. Fire away, Will.
Okay, a lot of questions. First one is from Facebook. Dylan Wolf asks, your mixes always sound big but organic. How did you get the 99 Problems mix so huge? It's unbelievably pushed and inflated, but it doesn't get fatiguing.
I agree.
I got lucky. I don't know. That was one where the balance happened, and I made sure not to touch it. And we spent a lot of time on that mix because we were doing a lot of overdubbing and arranging while we were mixing, and I just made sure that I always kept going back to that original, like first day, 3 hours in rough, and making sure I wasn't screwing
Did
it
Rick
up.
Rubin produce that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good question, Dylan.
One more from Thomas Steiger. I'm sorry if I messed that up. Finally, I have the chance to ask a question about the Red Hot Chili Peppers. How did you treat Anthony Kiedis' vocal and Flea's bass in terms of compression, EQ, and reverb to make them sit so present and yet not annoying in the mix? Is there a secret?
Yeah, just be skilled.
Well, yeah, first of all, be Anthony and Flea.
Right, start there.
I mean, the key to Anthony's sound, and we've done mic shootouts on him on every record, and it's an SM7 through a 1073 and an 1176, and that's the way the Chili Peppers sound. And I do almost nothing to him in the mix, almost nothing.
Really?
Wow.
And Flea's bass, it's the same way. It's his rig and the way he plays, and he's such a balanced player, and
You use a mic and a DI on them?
yeah, mic and DI, sometimes a couple of mics. But again, it's usually it's balance. It's just finding the balance with those guys, and then the way they perform is what does all the rides for me.
Wow.
So very static with them in the mixes usually.
It's pretty cool.
Fantastic.
I have a really hard-hitting question here from Sean Juilliard. He asks, would you say a good beard is essential to producing fantastic rock records?
It is the source of all my power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, it acts as a high-frequency absorber.
And there's the new James Harden Hall of Fame, which they're going to have the induction ceremony. I think it's next week or
He
something.
didn't show up yesterday,
No
did he?
question. His beard did, but he
Couple
didn't.
more?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure thing. Okay, old
Good question,
school 8 in the chat room asks, question, do you start with drums, bass in the traditional process, or are you a vocal to drums kind of guy when you're mixing?
I usually start with the drums because I want to then not work on the drums anymore. So I work on them so I can get them to my group fader and stop thinking about them like 12 microphones or 16 or now 30 microphones. I want it to be one thing. So I'll start there, and then it depends on the song.
One more from J.M. Weber. Question for Andrew. Do you use reference tracks? If yes, do you sometimes listen to it to do the opposite of what it sounds like?
No, I'm actually really bad at that because I mix in my own studio on one pair of speakers. I never switch speakers. I never listen to it anywhere else, and I never listen to anything else while I'm mixing. And I always know that I should, and I'm really lazy. So if someone says I want it to be like this, I'll immediately go listen to that thing and try and figure out what it is that they actually want. But no, I'm horrible at that. Horrible.
Man, don't change.
Yeah, Horrible's working pretty well.
Yeah, Harvard's working good for you.
What would you impart to our audience, guys who want to be you guys? What should they do? Should they just focus? What should they focus on in terms of their growth? I know it's a very broad question.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the first thing is, which a lot of people said on the show and everybody says, is you have to really just want it and just do it all the time. But in terms of a practical thing, I teach, and I know you teach, and I think it's really important to know what the stuff is that you're using, to have some sort of technical background. You don't have to be able to design it, you don't have to be able to fix it, but you need to know what every knob does, speaking of knobs. Like when you turn a knob, you gotta know what it's doing, because then, mostly because if you get into trouble, you can back your way out of it.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's critical that people are purposeful. You can't be purposeful without knowledge.
Yeah, and then you get to just forget all that knowledge and work creatively.
And work intuitively.
I think people underestimate the amount of time and let's call it practice that successful engineers go through. It's not unlike an athlete. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Right.
There's a reason why the good guys work every day, not necessarily because they're good, but because they're good because they work every day. It's difficult to take a week off and come back and just be where you where you left off, isn't it?
Well, especially with how insecure we all are. You know, seriously, we always think we're terrible, but when you're just doing it the whole time, you kind of convince yourself it's cool.
Yeah. Can we thank you? It goes so fast when you're that good as you are. What a pleasure to
Thanks for
spend.
having me.
Spend that
Let's
time.
don't have him back. Let's just let him take
Let's
over
just
the
keep-
show.
yeah, exactly.
Name the show after him.
If you'll allow us to bug you, because we never can get enough in the first hour, would you come back?
Absolutely, anytime.
And plus, you're a teacher, and it's just fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Thanks for
absolutely.
having me.
Dave, take us home. We're out of time, but
Okay.
it goes so well.
Man, another great day. I want you guys to thank Andrew personally, for taking the time to do this. He really had to make room in his schedule to come hang with us and to share these things with you. And this is one that you need to rewind and kind of absorb and go through some of the subtle things that he said. A couple of little things slipped by real fast that I think you should know. So I appreciate your support, guys. Thanks. And we do this for you, so that your support is very important. And we'll see you next week.